friends. Over the next 4 weeks, I'm going to break down how to read written music for uke. Now, I know for most of us, when we look for a new song, we are generally looking for tabs or tablature for that song, as that's the way that most of the music is notated, especially on the internet. But tabs do have advantages, but they also have disadvantages to traditional Western notation. Now, tabs' main disadvantage is that a lot of the time they do not show rhythm, which is a huge part of the picture, how long or how short a note is. Now, it's becoming more common in tablature to write rhythm out, but even that rhythm system that we use there is borrowed from our traditional written system. So by learning these systems, you're able to use it in both tablature and traditional Western written music. Now, tablature does have one big advantage, which is that it tells us exactly where the composer wants us to place our fingers on the strings. And that's important because on this instrument, we can play numerous notes in numerous different positions. Unlike on a piano, where if we want to play middle C, it is right here. But on our instrument, we can play it here, here, or here. So that's great for tablature, and it's really wonderful for such styles as campanella style playing, where we need to be more precise in our fingering. But the problem comes if, say, we want to speak to another musician that's not a fretted instrument player and tell them what we wish to play. A pianist is not going to know what we mean by saying that we are playing a note on the 7th fret of our C string. To them, that means nothing. But if we tell them that we are playing a G, they know exactly what that means. We need to keep in mind that music is a language, and we have a written form of this language. And to be able to really accurately convey our ideas to other people that speak this language, being able to write them down is highly beneficial. So even if you're not going to use this that much, it can still really help when you are working with other musicians. And lastly, it's going to open up a whole world of new music that is not arranged in tablature for you, that you'll be able to look at and know what notes you are playing. So in the next 4 weeks, we're going to dive into this. There will be accompanying worksheets that are linked below. They are all absolutely free because I want every uke player to have the opportunity to learn to read traditional music. So let's dive into this. In week 1, we're going to be dealing with the fundamentals of rhythm, which is really just how long or how short each note is on the page. Now, in music, we arrange these in what are called measures or bars, and that is the blank space in between the black lines. In the beginning of a song, we'll see what's called a time signature, which are 2 numbers that tell us A, how many beats are in each measure, and B, what note gets 1 beat. So our top number, in the most common of time signatures, which is 4/4, would be a 4, which tells us that there are 4 beats in each measure. If we had 3/4 or waltz time, there would be 3 beats in a measure. If we had something such as 6/8, there would be 6 beats in each measure. Now, our lower number is telling us which note gets 1 beat. Most commonly, this is going to be what's called a quarter note, which we'll talk about in just one moment. But just know that it can also change to different types of notes. And really, any note that we talk about in this course can be used as the main beat in a measure. So the first thing when we look at a piece of music is we want to look at the time signature and see how many beats are in each measure so we know how to properly subdivide this. So let's just jump into our types of beats, and we're going to be thinking in 4/4 for our purposes, just to keep it simple. Now, first, we have what's called a whole note. This is an open note without a stem, and this is going to get held for 4 beats. So if I counted in, it would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a whole note. Now we can subdivide this into 2 equally spaced notes, so they'll each get 2 beats. This is called a half note. And this looks much like a whole note, except we have a stem on it now. So if we played the same measure of 4 beats, but now with 2 half notes instead of 1 whole note, it would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we can subdivide this even further into what are called quarter notes. Now I mentioned earlier that quarter notes are what get 1 beat in this. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. Now that we're taking these half notes and cutting them in half into a quarter, now every time that we count 1, 2, 3, 4, we will play a note. Quarter notes are those filled in notes with a stem on them, and they will sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we can just keep subdividing this actually as far as we want. We won't go too far in this course, but we will commonly have what are called eighth notes. Eighth notes are an exact subdivision halfway of a quarter note. So we can't count this as 1, 2, 3, 4 anymore. We need something to fill in that blank there. So how we will count this is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's how we will count an eighth note. Now, eighth notes, we will see they have a little bar across the top connecting the notes, or if it's a single eighth note, it will just have a little flag on top. So if we count in 4, 4, let's listen to how eighth notes sound. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Let's try that one together. Just the eighth notes, and it will be a simple down and up strum on a C chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Very good. Quite simple. Now we can subdivide this even further to what are called 16th notes, which we won't see quite as often as eighths or quarters, but they do come up quite frequently. And again, we need another mnemonic device to kind of just bring this in so that we know how to properly divide this. We will say 1 E and a. So it will be 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. So we're going to count this in slow so we don't have to strum too fast. So it'll sound like this. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. So we can take these different types of rhythms and we can intersperse them throughout a song. We're not always going to play quarter notes. We're going to mix all of these up. So in addition to this, we need to know when to not play our instrument. So we have a device called rests, which are going to tell us to not just stop playing, but to stop the sound from our instrument, which is key. So we have a rest that corresponds with each of the notes that we just played. We have a whole rest, which looks like a little rectangle hanging off our next to last line, which will be 4 beats of not playing. And then we have a half rest, which is a same looking block, but it's just going on top of the next line there. We can have 2 of those. We'll have 2 beats of rest. A quarter note rest, an eighth note rest, and a 16th note rest, all of which notated on the page down below. So we need to know when not to play and when to play. Now down on the bottom of the page, what I've done is written just a simple exercise. What I want you to do is to write in the names of the beats on this page. So first we have 2 half notes, then a quarter note, 2 eighth notes, 2 quarter notes, 2 half notes, and then a whole note, and then we continue on. So let's do this together, nice and slowly. We're just going to do the first line to start. I'll play it first, and then play after me. We can count the beats out loud, so it'll sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try that first line together, and it might take a little to get used to reading these rhythms. Please do write in these subdivisions over top. Say them out loud. Clap them away from your instrument. This really has little to do with the instrument itself. It's really about learning the language effectively. So let's try this first line together. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now let's look at the second line here. We have 2 half notes and then a very similar rhythm, but we're repeating the second measure or second bar of this. The second line will sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, rest. Now under this first ending here, we have a half rest. So we don't want to let that note sustain. We want to actually physically stop the sound from our instrument. I'm going to link in the comments here some music theory resources and some practice pages so you can really work on this throughout the week before we hop into some more advanced rhythm reading next week. I'll see you there.